listening to Chrysalis Color, the podcast. Hello, this is Jorunn from Norway.
And Christine in Canada.
With a podcast about color analysis and how it applies to you in a practical way. We'll talk about how to use your colors to make your days brighter, your wardrobe more enjoyable, and your life easier.
We'll talk about topics that we find interesting, and we encourage you to submit your questions. A podcast listing is available at chrysaliscolor.com under the Podcasts tab.
Welcome to the Chrysalis Color Analysis Podcast. This is Jorunn recording from the remote wilderness of Telemark this time. It's a little windy and I hope it won't bother our listeners, but here we go. Episode 11, Hair Color, Part 1, in which we take on hair color, one of the topics we're asked about most often by women of all ages. We have plenty of color ideas to share, enough to cover 2 shows, actually. The next episode, number 12, will wrap up the general concepts and go on to focus on hair color by season.
Courtney St. John of Studio St. John in Massachusetts was instrumental in helping us create these shows. Courtney's a Chrysalis color analyst with both personal and client experience with at-home hair color. Some of our listeners may know Courtney from her blog posts here on Chrysalis Color, one detailing her own color journey, the second focusing on dark winter, and we'll link to both in the show notes. You can find Courtney here on Chrysalis under the Find an Analyst tab.
In today's episode, we'll cover our basic beliefs about flattering hair color and some general concepts that apply to most everyone to some degree. Prepare for some opinionated opinions. As usual, we do not hold back.
Color analysis is about seeing and honoring each person's uniqueness. Knowing your color season puts the ability to make your best choices into your hands. You got to have that system to filter the big world of fashion and shine as yourself. No more questioning your choices and feeling exhausted trying to keep up with a moving target. Looking your best is only exhausting if you're in a continuous struggle with your natural self. It is so much easier and more rewarding to work with yourself.
Don't let anyone tell you your own natural hair color isn't perfect. The same head of hair can look dull or dreamy, mediocre or magic, depending only on the colors around it. What makes colors show up and look beautiful is other colors. You never need to dye your hair to make some other aspect of appearance work. You can if you like the effect, but it's never a requirement. And do prioritize hairstyle over chemical color. Between basic grooming and an artificial look is a place called polished. Wearing your hair in a simple style and knowing how to do your version of polish means you're ready for all occasions. Hair dye does not replace cut, condition, and style. Natural color, including silver and transitional color, is stunning and beautiful, and more so when presented as intentional rather than not bothering with upkeep. Do try chemical color if you've wondered about it. It can be phenomenal. Once you know the hair colors you wear well, you can pass that knowledge on to your colorist. I dream of the day that a woman can walk into a salon and say, "I'm a soft summer." And the colorist comes back with a soft summer chart of 8 or 10 options to work from, rather than the current chart of 80 possibilities, although it just kind of feels like 400.
It does feel like 400 when you're sitting there. And I have the exact same dream. And it might come true because we're training more and more hair colorists as color analysts. And it is the best thing women could ask for to get those right the first time colors. And a colorist who understands how to adjust over the years. Until then, clients have got to advocate for themselves. And that means self-knowledge to replace asking the colorist for information they just don't have.
Your natural colors are more important for choosing hair color than the current trend is. Your natural colors don't change, and as with clothes, trends don't serve us all. They don't even serve most of us. Trend is a way to boost sales. Nothing else, nothing more. And how many of those trends stick around anyway?
About natural hair color. Red hair is like the wild card. It can appear in any season, as varied in the type of red and as right for each person as their silver hair. The only season, actually, where I've never seen natural red hair is true summer, but given human diversity, I am sure it exists. Something that Joran and I would like to share with you. We understand, we're very sensitive to the fact that appearance is a topic that can put more emotion than logic on the table. But as women making choices, as people making choices, we need plain facts and straight up talk. We're not here to say someone's right or wrong. We're all together on the same road. We just want to give you an appearance alternative, maybe push back a little against the things we're told and sold. Media as our mirror, well, more often tells us hurtful things about ourselves under the guise of having our backs and empowering us. Hasn't been my experience. Has it yours?
You know it hasn't.
I do know it hasn't. Yep. Ask any woman at any age. I know it hasn't.
It's true. And Christine and I, being the way we are, we offer our opinions about appearance. And they are opinions, even though we like to flatter ourselves by thinking of them as educated opinions. We want you to know that we're talking about us too. We're trying new things. We're learning from our mistakes, and we're eager to share solutions that worked when we had the same questions that you do.
Look, I'd want to know about the spinach in my teeth. Yes, that's all it is, right? That's all it is. The friend you call to go shopping with, the friend I call to go shopping with, is not the one who's going to tell me everything is gorgeous. Might feel safe, but it denies you the opportunity to reach a better place. If my hair color is not helping me look better, and you're a friend of mine, tell me before I spend another dollar. The problem, though, is they need to see two of us side by side. So if you're buying lipstick, your friend says, yeah, okay, try one. Okay, now try the other. Yeah, it's this one. It's about the color. It's not about you. But we can't do this with hair unless we're trying on wigs or keeping a photo journal.
Keeping a photo journal. Finally, there's some good use for selfies. Is there any woman who can accurately recall her hair from 10 years ago? No. Even 2 years ago? Still no.
No, we're changing all the time, whether we're dyeing our hair or not. So in this podcast, we're going to offer you experience, information, and suggestions that have helped us and thousands of others reach that better, clearer place that it just happens to look better. We want to open the way to better conversations about how far from reality is too far.
Yeah. And let's just run through a few disclaimers. Christine, you want to run those by us?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Hair color is an individual decision, one person at a time. And it's determined in three ways. One is by your color season. Each season or group of natural coloring has certain hair colors they wear well. We can't wear any color or hope to adapt the hair color for our skin tone using makeup. It just doesn't work. Others can see something's off, something feels forced, either two colors that don't look right together or one is changing the other in some kind of way. It's got to be better to wear hair color that doesn't require you to change yourself. Number two is individual coloring within any season. There are darkness levels, more in some seasons than others. There's also variety in how colors appear within a group. Might mean very light blonde or light brown hair, say in one of the light seasons. Might be even more color variety, meaning blonde, red, light brown, dark brown, or black, all of which could appear in some kind of winter. What's important about color analysis is that everyone in a given season reacts to color the same way. But for a given person, the hair color choices relate to the individual within the season. What were you born with? Don't go too far from it. Many springs are blonde, many are not blonde. Then they don't make great blondes. So this moment is about you. And then the third thing to keep in mind is personal chemistry. Original hair texture influences the effect of chemical color. Joran, Courtney, and I, we're not hair color technicians. We can't tell you levels, but we all know and could predict that the same hair color is going to turn out different applied to two different heads. If you've been coloring your hair The texture at the roots is different from the texture where chemical color has been used because the porosity is different. The way the hair color absorbs the dye will be different. In a salon, your colorist makes these adjustments because she or he has the advantage of being able to see your whole head. As market research for this episode, I asked some well-traveled and highly educated Generation Z members for their thoughts on the biggest hair color mistake of the under 35 set. So these are young people in the 20 to 25-year-old range. They answered coloring hair gray or platinum, half and half or ombre effects in dark hair, and dyeing it so much it's dried out. Took them less than 10 seconds, immediate and unanimous. So this was getting interesting. I asked them about the over 35 group. What are the most common mistakes? Avoiding silver and too many highlights. So it's nice to know there's not so much difference between the generations after all. A 23-year-old male was funny. He was a little perplexed, like I was asking a trick question. And he said, isn't the hair color you were given your best? Well, yeah, I must agree. I asked then, I love these conversations, about makeup mistakes of their age group. Let's say the under 30s. Too glowy, too tanned, too contoured with hollowed out noses and cheeks, and eyelashes too long to see eyes on any age. Saying then, well, what looks good in photos, it's not real life. Right, it's not. And in the brave new world that I very much want to be part of, I'm happy to say that looking like yourself is gaining ground. So Joran and Courtney and I thought through a few familiar situations.
Yes, we did. And for example, here's something that color analysts and many clients can relate to. Here's you. You have already been coloring your hair for some time, and now you have a color analysis. The instant the gray cap is removed, you see that the hair color looks suddenly off or clashes with your new palette. With the hair covered, it was clear that the new palette resonated beautifully with your skin tone and brought the sparkle you were looking for when you set out to have your colors done. And then when the gray cap came off, the dissonance of the processed hair color was startling. You saw it immediately, and after that, it just felt awkward. A hair correction may be in order, particularly if we take a long time to return to your natural color. If you're not sure what that natural color might look like, or you're not ready for silver.
Mm-hmm. We see this over and over, and the woman it really wants to fix her hair because she can see that it's the problem here. So we asked Courtney, who would color their hair at home? Whatever your natural color is, and that includes silver, you can rest assured that it will blend with your natural skin tone and seasoned color palette, meaning your clothing and your makeup, which is what the rest of us are going to see at the same time as we see your hair.
Some women like to play with hair color and style in the same way that they enjoy creatively dressing with color and style. Just don't play in the dark. Choosing hair color randomly is like playing blindfolded in traffic, and there's no reason to. You can find plenty of the guidance you need in your season palette, in Pinterest boards, and other resources that your chrysalis analyst can connect you with.
Whether you're shopping for clothes or hair color, pay attention to your seasonal palette and be sure that the pinks, the reds, the purples, the burgundies, lavenders, blondes, or ash tones you choose don't diminish the integrity and power of your color palette. Remember, everything's got to look great together, better for being together. It's never one at the expense of the other. And those not for you hair colors, they become more apparent in the same way that you learned over time which necklines look best. Take time with this decision. Patience is a virtue. Make small adjustments over a period of time and wait while your eyes adjust. Pay more attention to clothing or makeup for a couple of weeks before coming back to hair color.
Now, we also asked Courtney who wouldn't color their hair or color their hair at home. And one point is, or one type of people is, those who want a big change, probably from an unflattering dye job back to a better choice. Hopefully nobody, and I mean nobody, is coloring natural hair far from its own color. It can be a long road back, and great color is close to home when it comes to hair, unless you work on a stage. And then it's a look with a capital L, not a healthy human being functioning in the modern world.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Another group who shouldn't color their hair at home. Those who prefer a one-step process or know that they'll be comfortable with a big change in the mirror. Small steps are great for the DIY colorist. Keep costs down, alternate colors, adjust gradually, but big or sudden adjustments may be best done in the salon.
Mm-hmm. The third group who should be cautious is anyone with a physical constraint applying dye. While coloring your hair at home is not difficult, you'll need to be able to see what you're doing. We're thinking about the back and sides. Can you reach the back of your head and hold the mirror while you do it? A partner can help if this is difficult for you. And as we age, shoulder mobility, the ability to simultaneously use the mirror while applying the color with the other hand, the lack of desire to do the frequent touch-ups needed to maintain a natural look, or noticing that you keep missing spots so that the result is patchy, can be a signal that it's time to give up self-coloring. Then it's better to go gray and rather spend energy, money, and time on getting clothes in your best colors.
Now, I'd love to jump in and emphasize that point. One of the reasons women, probably the biggest reason that women can feel dissatisfied with their silver hair is that the clothing and the cosmetics haven't changed when the hair changed. You need to bring them up a little bit. It is very important to use your palette for clothes and makeup once hair silvers. It can make a world of difference in appearance and in confidence.
Yeah, I agree. And the fourth group is swimmers. Swimmers should consider not coloring their hair, actually, or at least leave it to professionals. Chlorinated water and sunlight, they change the color of processed hair. You may find yourself constantly correcting a processed hair color that works well in winter, but is subject to chemical and natural interference in the summer. Many women want to balance the effect of sunlight with dye. For Courtney, she's a light spring, she uses a color labeled ash to correct the tendency to yellow in the summer. However, she doesn't apply this to the whole head, just to the roots. This is usually necessary in July and sometimes in August for her. And one might ask why this works, since the overly yellowed color isn't removed. The proximity in lightness between the adjacent shades, once the more ashy tone is applied to the roots, seems to tone down the overall effect.
So we're staying with the theme of general advice. And together, we agreed on what is rarely flattering on anybody. First one that came to mind, solid color. This advice for any season, particularly as we age, avoid a single block of color. Since women with little experience with hair color have had to resort to coloring at home during the COVID pandemic, those multi-tonal effects that colorists achieved at the salon, well, they've been wiped out. It is possible to do it yourself. Buy 2 or 3 boxes of color and be patient. Don't overdo it. You're at home now. It's a great time to experiment with subtle do-it-yourself highlights. There are so many shades to choose from. Be easy to pick 2, 3, mix as undertones or highlights. Create a look that is far more modern.
Yep. And what's also generally not flattering is dated colors. Just as clothing colors and styles follow trends, so do hair colors. And who knows what we'll think of today's trendy hair colors in 10 years. For example, in the 60s, all-over blonding was very popular, often a Barbie doll platinum or Doris Day yellow. Sometimes these processed colors worked with the individual skin tone, but more often they did not. There were lots of corn yellows or corn yellow with orange-toned roots that resulted in the disappearance of the facial features of the person.
And then the next decade came along, right? In the 70s, the blonde color du jour was ashy blonde, and it turned faces gray. The movie Heaven Can Wait, Diane Cannon, Julie Christie, they had this then popular shade of blonde. And then during the same time period, darker brunettes were highlighting with silver streaks, ending up with this kind of Cruella de Vil look in some cases. If the native brown was warm, those cool silver highlights were in stark contrast. And funny, I lived through this and thought it was kind of normal at the time, but.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Frightening, isn't it? And more recently, well, hair color has evolved. At least we like to think of it as it evolved. And as I said earlier, who knows what we'll think about it in 10 years' time.
Right.
And we often tend to prefer more natural-looking highlighted effects. And maybe that will make it last longer. I don't know. Still, a mismatch between an individual's seasonal tone and hair color will not be flattering, no matter how beautifully executed the hair color or highlight job is. Courtney, she recalls shopping at Marshall's one day and noticing the so-called young mom uniform, a blonde highlighted ponytail, black yoga pants, and a black athletic jacket. Some faces stood out, most disappeared. Some bodies looked athletic and fit, and others would have been flattered by a different choice of color and style.
Yeah, color is cultural too, isn't it? In South Korea, where most women and men have naturally dark hair, there seems to be a tendency currently for red hair dye. Well, red hair is like freckles. It can occur in any season, but there are those Koreans who are stunning in their choice of dye, even though it's clearly not natural. And then there's others for whom their chosen shade of red is just entirely too overpowering. I mean, artistry is super. It's a personal choice. But the goal that's been achieved, if the color is too overpowering, might be self-expression, not the beauty of color harmony. So I asked a young Korean color analyst if, in a place where many people are winters, did women desire to heighten their uniqueness? And she thought that it would be truer to say that women want to look like the best version of themselves. Not so different from us, is it? So, as you've heard in this podcast, you start by knowing your season. Then bring on all the artistry you like, avoiding colors that create detracting effects. And now you're the master of both worlds, your own beauty and self-expression.
Courtney says that, regarding that Korean trend of red hair, she says she's noticed the same tendency in the US as red highlights have gained popularity. Again, the observant Courtney was out and about and observed an older woman who, probably unable to maintain her red locks due to COVID-19, was now sporting a two-toned, the bottom half of her hair red-brown, and the top half variegated shades of gray. The gray was steely, threaded with light and dark shades of glossy gray. Her glasses were cool and dark-rimmed and a good blend with her hair. Her gray hair. The red-brown half of her head was warm, caramelized, and very bright. The bottom half was frizzy and straw-like, the crown wiry, but not as wild as the colored portion. Courtney's eyes jumped back and forth between the red, the gray, and the glasses. Could a better red-toned color have been more harmonious? Surely. Was she ever a redhead when younger? Hard to say. And would she accept it if 10 people told her that the gray is hands down better? Not sure. Well, several solutions come to our mind anyway. Cut off the red-brown, at least. Keep the gray, or use the gray to locate another red that harmonizes better with the color of her native grays by examining the assorted red-toned options that are out there on the shelves.
And if the woman wanted to continue coloring her hair, well, then test the new red. Apply it as a very subtle highlight on the underlayers of the hair. Gradually, the density of the red can be enhanced, incorporating it on other strands over time. The whole picture is just more convincing too when a second highlight, closer to the, say, 25-year-old hair color, were added in the same manner. Given the contrast between the dyed hair and the natural gray, well, the fact is that any all-over process is going to be more difficult to maintain. In your red, often your best red hair is among your palette reds, or the same guidelines apply, soft and dark, light and bright, whatever is true for your season in general.
Well, I just want to jump in and say here that everybody listen up. Everybody should keep a photo of themselves as a 25-year-old. It's just invaluable.
It really is. It sets a very useful baseline. I was interested.
We keep coming back to 25-year-old, your hair color at 25. I think it's a great advice. Sorry.
Well, it's kind of that balance point, right? Where you've gone through adolescence, your season has settled, and you haven't really begun, you've darkened fully, but haven't begun changes that come with maturity. So it's just a very useful balance point. Not saying everyone can wear their 25-year-old color today, just saying it's a very good place to start. Yeah.
Yep.
I was interested too, Jorunn, in the idea of dated colors. It's so hard, it's so easy, I guess, to look at other people and so hard to look at ourselves. I mean, how would you know if your hair color were dated? I think about, well, how would I know if it were clothes? Mental connections could get made with an era, a situation, a costume. The hair color might register as something besides hair. I think, and Jorunn, I think you would agree, sophisticated hair, it's a backdrop. It's part of a composition. It happened by itself. I'd rather see style get attention in its own right than color. Once we leave what nature taught us to expect as normal and possible, these odd associations happen. But there's a timelessness to choosing color that harmonizes with a color palette. I mean, a color could be dated in 5 years, or it might continue to be a great color for a person, depending on how fast their natural coloring is changing, because we're always in color flux to some degree. This is where the importance of looking at yourself as an individual comes up. Like on a young person, you might see a color or style and think, oh, so that's back in style. Older woman might wear the same style or color and give an impression of, yeah, she didn't keep up, or it must be a costume for a party. Or she's not paying attention to the times. Or, any association you just don't need people to make with your appearance. We totally know, Jorunn, Courtney, and I, that there is a fine line between modern, relevant, healthy, vital, and that territory of trying too hard. As long as it doesn't look like fake hair, well, it might be fine. The best, easiest, cheapest, fastest, yes, you can have them all at the same time, solution is to aim for a current version of you. In choosing a cut, Jorunn's hairstylist isn't working with Jorunn at 30 or Jorunn in 2010. She's working with Jorunn today in 2020.
Yes, my hairstylist. I talk a lot about her, don't I? I love my hairstylist. And she's cut my hair for years, and she often talks about how important it is for her to give the client a haircut that follows the lines of the face instead of following the latest trend, but always with a current spin on it. And that's why I'm always comfortable with the haircut that she gives me.
Yep. If I ever go to Norway, my first stop, day one, I will have an appointment with this woman. Yes. So here's a definite don't situation. Home bleached effects. The bleached hair is too light, too near white. No matter how much conditioner and irons you pull it through, and it looks like it was bleached in the kitchen sink. So try to look at yourself with as little emotion as possible. Just register what you would see and how you'd react if this were a woman in a bank lineup or just walking around a museum. And I think home bleach is probably easy to correct or not too hard because whatever you're applying is darker than the bleached color, but really even better, cut it off and start again. Even the young who can get away with a lot cannot pull this off. Now, not everything is right advice for everyone. If this were the photo, if home bleached hair were the photo you'd pull out of a magazine as what you would love to look like, well, then carry on.
Oh, yes. Here's another no-no. Hair that makes no sense with eyebrows. The hair is blonde or red, and the brows are cool and dark. And they look like a man's brows or drawn in too blue or purple looking. They really need to be compatible. If your brows are too much lighter than your hair, not too light, but much lighter than your hair, use a powder somewhere between the natural brow and your hair to bridge it. They should work with the face enough to not catch the attention of the viewer, who then can't unsee them.
Yep. Some people have very light brows with dark hair, and it's normal on them, but they tend to be young. For me, my brows used to be much darker colored. They've gotten much lighter, but my hair hasn't. So kind of odd, but there it is. While we're at it, let's mention relying on dye to solve or replace appearance and cosmetic attention. It's like the other side of saying, again, you cannot fix the wrong hair color with makeup. You can't fix wrong makeup with hair color either, come to think of it. Also, relying on hair dye for youthfulness, it can work to a point. Sure, it can. But then it kind of starts doing the reverse. There is an age where facial lines are actually accentuated by chemical color.
And this is as far as we got on this episode. But there's so much more to be said about hair color. So tune in next time when we'll go on to about common hair coloring mistakes for the mature crowd and the young people, and also get into specific advice for each of the seasons. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time. Bye.